You think this is fancy?
This is fancy.
Fortunately, I got to me, this is formal. This is fancy.
Formerly, I got dressed up.
You're good. You're good. Yeah. I wanted to have you because we can talk about so many different places we can go. But there was a piece that Maureen Dowd just wrote in the New York Times, and we've had other people on the stage who people have speculated might want to be the president of the United States, but you came out and said it. You kind of would like to be the president of the United States.
No, that's not what I said.
If you could.
That's not what I said. I said I'm considering it. I think that given the circumstances, there's a unique opportunity for somebody like me who's independent, who's not affiliated with a party in any way. I haven't given money to a politician since 2002. And I think that people are looking for an independent voice, a real independent voice that at least has an inkling of what they're talking about.
Let me tell you what Maureen wrote. She said, Trump and Cuban are testosterone twins in some ways. Both savor poking elites and flouting convention. Both have owned sports teams and love making movies.
Wait. He owned a sports team for about 6 minutes.
But the government has conspired against him. Trump and the deep state in Cuban when he fended off insider trading charges by the SEC, which we should also talk about. But tell me, do you think in this environment we have moved to a completely different place in politics in America, which is to say, business people writ large, you hear all sorts of names, whether it be Bob Iger of Disney as a possibility. Have we moved to a different place? Are the next elected candidates of all stripes not going to be people who spent time in politics historically, but maybe people like you?
Yes. I think, I'll tell you a quick story. I've known Donald, a lot of people here have. I was talking to him, I even supported him briefly, and then got to know him. And I was talking to a friend in Dallas, a red state, and I was explaining what I knew about him and why I was not going to support him any longer. And I said, why would you vote for this man after all I've just said? He goes, Mark, let me just tell you something. This guy is in his 50s that I've known forever. He goes, I've been voting for politicians my entire adult life, and they've done nothing for me, and I've not seen any results. You know the definition of insanity? There you go. And when you go around the country and you talk to people and you ask, you know, why did you go this way? Why did you vote this way? People are tired of politicians and the things that politicians do. And whether it's me, Bob Iger, Howard Schultz, or somebody else, I think there's a door that's wide open. And I think somebody who doesn't have a deep affiliation with either party or with politicians has an even greater opportunity.
Okay, it was reported that, quote, Steve Bannon had identified Cuban as the #1 threat for 2020 because he could appeal to Republicans and independents. You met with Steve Bannon at some point.
Yeah. I've known Steve Bannon for 20 years. And it was just to tell stories about Donald.
And what happened?
Nothing. I mean, look, I met with Michael Cohen, his lawyer, this morning to talk to him about his book. I met with it ended up being 8 Democratic senators yesterday in D.C. to talk about health care, so I try to get a better understanding. I talked to others about artificial intelligence and the impact on the workforce. I met with Republicans. I met with Jet Flake yesterday. So I'll talk to everybody. To me, you can't absorb enough knowledge and you can't connect with people enough. And so I don't want to just limit myself to one silo. I don't want to be in a bubble. I want to get feedback from everybody.
So you say you're considering it. What would put you in the ring or out of the ring?
The reason why I'm considering and haven't committed is because I've got 3 kids. What caring, loving parent would put an 8, 11, and 14-year-old child through this?
What did your wife say?
She asked me if I want to stay married.
Do you think that you'd be able to persuade her?
I don't know, but I think I have a year to find out. I think, just look at what's happened in the past year. I think in the next year, there's plenty of time to... Done. There you go. There's plenty of time to find out, and so I don't have to rush.
It sounds, though, that you're more interested than you were even a couple of weeks or months ago when you said, I'm considering it, or I wish I could think about it, but I really can't.
No, I wouldn't say I'm more interested. I just think the circumstances continue to change. And as things evolve, it becomes more interesting. And as a citizen, I become concerned. Look, where I'm at in my life, if I have a chance to influence policy or if I have a chance to do something good for the country, I want to try to do it. And that doesn't necessarily mean I have to run for president. There's a lot of ways to have an impact. And the more in tune I am, the more connected, the more educated I am about a variety of topics, the easier it is for me to decide.
And you would, if you ran, you would run as a Democrat?
No, absolutely not.
As an independent?
Potentially, and I'd say...
Or as a Republican?
Republican before Democrat, most likely independent, because I think there's an incremental value for setting up an independent candidacy. Now, I understand the difficulties of that and the challenges of that from an infrastructure perspective, but the positives for doing it as a Republican means you get to go head on with Trump right in the primaries. And so there's nothing I'd have more fun doing. The benefit of being an independent is you go right to the golden ticket time, right? And if I get enough support in the polls, then I get to participate with the debates, which is right up there with something.
I think you really are considering and thinking about it.
Well, no, I'm considering, obviously considering, but again, what caring, loving parent would put their 3 young children through the disaster? I mean, my now 14-year-old girl, it's hard enough raising a 14-year-old girl. It's really hard raising a 14-year-old girl. And, you know, the thought of what she'd have to face over the next couple of years on social media and from her friends, and particularly in a red state, that's not, you know, a comforting thought.
I want to talk to you about social media in just a moment, but I want to ask you about where we may or may not be in 2020, because there's an argument that I've heard many a times among most people in the business community that say, if the stock market continues the way it does, if the economy, at least the headline numbers that we see, continue the way they do, and North Korea doesn't do anything, that it's actually a slam dunk for Donald Trump to win again.
I mean, everybody's a genius in a bull market, right? And so for a typical president, I think you'd be absolutely correct. But with a president who has absolutely no common sense, can't get out of his own way, and, you know, the only real battle he's winning is for the least popular president in modern history, the rules might be a little bit different.
Do you look at today's economy and think it's good? Do you think we're in a bubble?
I think there's multiple economies in this country. If you live in a city, if you live in an area with a dense population, it's not so bad. It may be a little bit more expensive to live, and there's challenges associated with that. But if you live in smaller towns or you live in a smaller city, you have a completely different set of challenges. You're not seeing 4.1% unemployment. You're seeing your friends die of overdoses. You're not looking at new technology creating new jobs in your community. You know, you're looking at the fire and police department growing because of all those overdoses. And so it's just, there are 2 different worlds, and you have to be able to deal with both.
What does Mark Cuban, the investor, think of what's going on right now?
Ride it hard. You know, I think I keep a little bit, you know, as a hedge. I call it my Trump hedge, because you just never know. There's just, you know, now 280 characters can change the market in a heartbeat. So, you know, I've got a hedge on, but other than that, I just let it ride.
And that's because you think the economy actually is strong.
I think there's some great companies. So when you look at the stock market, look, the world is lifting all tides in a lot of respects. You've got the fact that there's a scarcity effect. You know, from over the last 20 years, we've gone from 8,000 plus public companies to 3,500. And if everybody's putting their money into indexes and mutual funds now, by definition, things have got to go up. And so as long as that continues, that scarcity value is going to keep on pushing things up regardless of the economy.
What do you think about tech? We're going to have Jack Dorsey here a little later. We're going to have somebody from Facebook. Obviously, we've seen the stock valuations. Twitter has struggled in a different way, but Square has done quite well recently. Are we in a bubble in the tech world?
No, I mean, look, I've lived through bubbles and enjoyed them immensely. But
we're a beneficiary of one.
A significant one. But I don't think we're in a bubble because of that scarcity value. You know, it's almost like Bitcoin. You know, stocks and Bitcoin have a lot in common in that for stocks that don't pay a dividend, they've almost become collectibles. this fund, this index has to own them. And if enough money comes in, they have nowhere else to put the money. And so the stocks are going to go up.
Let me ask you about tech. If you were President Cuban, and there's a big conversation right now about regulating technology, meaning the big guys in the valley, what would President Cuban do?
I'm not a fan of heavy regulation. I think, in terms of the whole Russian ad thing with Facebook, the FTC covers that. If the FTC does their job and, there's already rules and things in place for native advertising and how that's dealt with, then we don't need to create more legislation there. I think there are challenges that the growth of these companies create, but I don't, I've seen amazing tech companies that were dominating the world no longer dominate. I mean, IBM, Microsoft was great, and then it wasn't. Google is still largely dependent on search. That could change in a heartbeat.
We're going to have Randall Stevenson on in just a little bit. Would you allow the AT&T Time Warner deal to happen?
Yes. Now let me disclose. They're based in Dallas, so I'm on one of their tech committees. But yes, I mean, I'll give you an example of why. I got a pitch from Facebook the other day for a Do or Dare TV show, is what they're calling it, show. And part of their pitch to me to do the show is, they'll donate $25,000 to the charity of my choice to go out and make an idiot on the show, make an idiot of myself on the show. But the bigger part of it was, you have access to 2 billion potential Facebook viewers. It wasn't, we have 90 million households. It wasn't, there are 108 or however many million households in this country. 2 billion potential viewers. The scale of entertainment leans so heavily towards Facebook. Then you look at Google in terms of YouTube, and even Amazon with Twitch and what they're doing with Prime. AT&T needs, if you're going to be in the entertainment business, there needs to be consolidation, not so they can keep up, but so they can pretend to be within fumes distance of what's going on with the top 5 market cap companies in the world, plus Netflix.
Does the consolidation help or hurt the valuation of sports leagues like the NBA, teams like yours?
Irrelevant. Irrelevant because, and here, I'll tell you why. One school of thought says, well, sports rights fees must be going down, right? Because it's tougher in that market. But what they don't recognize is, these large entertainment media platforms, the online, the Facebooks, the Googles, et cetera, are the largest market cap, huge revenue, huge profits. But none of them have been able to succeed and be truly effective in recreating audiences or directing audiences to certain programming. If you want to get a significant audience, relatively speaking, to any of your original programming, the best and most cost-effective way to do it is through live sports. And so I think the sports rights fees for our league in particular are going to skyrocket.
We were talking and had Melody Hobson on earlier, and we're talking about diversity. She talked about taking a knee. And I was curious, given the Kaepernick situation, if one of your players took a knee, what would you do? Well,
more than 10 years ago, one of my players was on a video saying the national anthem, it's not our national anthem. And I've got every amount of hate email that you can imagine, calling him and me every single word in the book. And what I did was I published those on a blog post, and things kind of changed, but I supported him. I supported him because he is an American citizen and he has the right to communicate what's on his mind. When we invaded Iraq in 2002, we had players who stood up against that and said, I am against the war. And I supported them. This is no different, but when it happens in football, it's a little bit different there, simply because if the New York Giants or New York Jets walk through here, you might be able to recognize 3 people from each team. You're not going to know the other 50, and they don't really have large social media platforms like NBA players, so their only real opportunity to take a stand is when the cameras are on.
You love this country, but you also had a run-in with the government. I mentioned it earlier. Yeah. What was the lesson of that?
The lesson when I got charged with insider trading and kicked their ass?
Yeah.
We have some dumbass running the SEC.
Still.
It's changing a little bit, but yeah, it was ridiculous. So, and I'll tell you why I say that. If you really wanted to reduce insider trading and increase your conviction rate, then the best way to do it is to publish bright line rules on your website. and make it readily available. You can do this, you cannot do this. You can do this, you cannot do, because then there's no question. But they keep it as gray as possible because they want to bring as many lawsuits and charges as possible. It's an employment act. Because you go, the SEC, the more charges. Before my case was even over, and by the way, it went to trial in Dallas. I was found not liable in 3 hours, 1 hour of which was lunch. It was ridiculous. And it took 7 years, 7 years to get there. And so if you wanted to solve the problem, there's 1,000 better ways to do it, and they make no effort to do any of them. That's ridiculous.
Let me ask you a separate question because it's in the news. Another guy who is sometimes put in your category of sorts, Carl Icahn. I don't know if you saw the news. Southern District has subpoenaed him. Subpoenaed a former, they're calling him the White House advisor, Carl Icahn, for information about his push to change the federal biofuels program. You think that makes sense?
I don't know. I don't know enough about it.
Is that crazy to you?
I don't know. I really don't know enough about it one way or the other.
I was going to also...
See, that's where Donald Trump and I are different.
I was also going to ask you, you have been on the Forbes list for many, many years. And I don't know if you saw one of President Trump's cabinet members, Wilbur Ross, was recently found, or at least the Forbes folks said that he may have lied about how much money he really had. I'm curious, do they come to you every year? And how does that work?
Here's an email. Here's what we have for you. I have no interest in responding. Okay, thanks. We're going to run with this.
And you do what when it comes out?
I get my Forbes, I get my Business Week, and they come in the mail. I stick them in my bathroom, and when I get a chance, I read them.
Okay, we're going to open it up. We're going to open it up for questions. We're going to open it up for questions. I want to play a quick game of long short with you.
Okay.
We just had Dara on Uber. I know there's a story behind this.
I'm still long Uber, and Lyft.
And Lyft, both.
Both.
But it was an investment that you could have had early.
Yeah, I mean, I financed Travis Kalani's previous company. And he came to me right out of the bat, and I started saying, you're going to have a battle with all these taxi cab commissions, and never heard back from him, and he went and got $30 million.
Elon Musk, Tesla.
In this administration, I probably short it. Any other administration, I'd be long.
Snap.
I'm still long. Put aside valuation, but as a company, I'm long. Because I see what my kids do. I see the usage. I see how ingrained it is in kids' day-to-day life. So I still think they've got a lot of upside.
And because we have Jack here later, Twitter and Square.
Long Square, again, putting aside valuations, but just the companies themselves. Long both of them, I think. I think because Twitter's getting smarter.
Okay, let's open up for questions. I think that the former commissioner of the NBA is in the house.
What? Don't find me, David, wherever you are.
David Stern. You have a microphone, sir?
There he is.
Here I am.
I know that voice anywhere.
You didn't have to dress today, Mark. It's okay.
Trying to keep up with you, David.
Was there a question?
The question, no, I thought you had a question. I got a little earpiece here.
By the way, I just want to say, I helped raise him.
Yes, he
and I'm
did.
gonna vote for him.
Thank you.
That's all.
You did help raise me.
And we would clearly, based upon this conversation, we would have a conversation about everything. There would be no stealth legislation, no stealth deregulation, no stealth anything with Mark. It's all out there, as this audience is learning.
David, since you're here, what do you think about the way the NBA has handled what might be described as the Kaepernick situation relative to the NFL?
There are two separate situations. I subscribe to what Mark said. I mean, LeBron has twice as many social media followers as the president does. And our players, from the day they come into the league, are taught to use social media, express themselves. There's a requirement sometimes that they talk to the media after a practice, before a game, after a game, after the game for the two players. They're encouraged to just let it all out.
But David, who helped you set up your Twitter account?
Was it you?
Yep.
Oh, well,
yep.
I know he helped me do everything. After I find him, I would then call him and say, how do I do this?
Where do I spend this money? Yep.
Relationship, very unusual relationship. Okay. Let someone else guess the question.
David Stern,
David.
Thank you.
You're the best, David. Thank you.
Let's get a couple other shots on goal. Mr. Greenfield's in the front row.
Uh-oh. I'll repeat the question. Go ahead, Rich.
So there's chatter today that Fox and Disney restarted talks. If Disney doesn't
Disney doesn't have enough scale. In 2017, if Disney doesn't have scale, what does it mean for the rest of the media universe that you have investments and you look across this whole space? What's scale?
Well, it means the AT&T Time Warner deal should happen because you're going to see a lot more comparable deals have to happen. I mean, where Disney excels in my mind is they can take characters, they can take franchise movies and exploit them and market them better than anybody. And, through Fox, if they, get more franchise opportunities, that's a win for them. But your point's well taken. For little guys like Access TV, somebody who's trying to create their own online web environment, it's a grind. It's good. What you see with Facebook now in terms of video content, the fact that you need Facebook so dramatically to help you is what you saw with Google and newspapers before. It's creating its own set of challenges that, it's like a drug. It'll help lift you, and then when they decide to compete with you, it's going to be a real challenge. It's a difficult marketplace for small to medium-sized media companies of any kind.
Okay, let's take one final question right over here.
Mark, if you were elected president, would you embrace term limits in Congress?
Yeah, I mean, the argument goes both ways. It's not something I've thought about, honestly. I don't have a strong opinion.
Before I let you go, what is the President Cuban tax plan? Given we heard from the we heard about the Schultz tax plan.
So my business thing is when you have a great product, when you have a great company, you don't need to be the lowest price. We have the best country in the world to do business. We need to be competitive. I would definitely lower corporate taxes to 24, 25%. But we don't have to be the lowest. There's so many advantages to doing business here that, we don't need to be the lowest in the world. And you don't want to create a set of perverse incentives, particularly with individual income taxes, because what all these models and all these predictions right now with the new tax code potentially coming out is there's going to be all kinds of arb opportunities between the individual tax rate at 39% and the pass-through rate at 20%. And if I'm 25 or 30 years old, I'm writing an app that says, sign up with us, put your paycheck through us, and everybody who's part of this group gets 20%. We're all just going to be part of this subchapter S, and all of a sudden those revenues that they expect and the growth they expect. And then part two to that, give us the numbers, right? When you talk about $1.2 trillion deficit in year 10, that means it's a whole lot worse in years 1 through 4. And given the political uncertainty in those years, you can't assume anything.
Before I really let you go, you had said earlier that you were hedging your investments. But what does the Cuban family do with its money? What do you invest in?
What do I invest in? Cash, treasuries, municipalities. I've had MLPs for stuff that I've had forever. The only new stuff, Amazon is now my biggest stock holding, and Netflix is second. Just because of their growth. I've had them for a long time. But, I mean, I don't switch things around. I don't move it around a lot. I invest in a lot of private companies because I try to really support entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship. And, yeah, it's just, look, I'm the luckiest guy in the world. All I got to do is not fuck it up.
Mark Cuban, everybody, thank you. Thank you for a great conversation.
Thank you,
Thank you so much. Enjoy lunch, everybody. Thank you.